Hey, boys and girls, welcome to another quick tip here on Industrial Digital Alchemy. This time, I would like to show you how you can use the Quixel Bridge to pretty much enhance your environment for scenes that you created. In this case, it's the crowd scene here from the VFX school, the Alien Trooper setup. They released a tutorial about the creation of this massive crowd here and some flying impacts, whatever explosion-like behavior. And I will show you how you can access the tutorial and make your own little army in Houdini. The main focus of this tutorial will be the connection to the Quixel Bridge and Arnold and how you can set up all those details like grass and canyons and bones, stones. So let's get started. So first of all, let's jump to sideeffects.com, the creator and maker of this awesome Houdini 18.5 software. And you have the menu here, can go to learn. And under the tutorial section, you will find pretty much new and advanced tutorials for every kind of skill set, from beginner to intermediate, paid ones, and advanced ones. So the tutorial I was using for this scene is Crowds and Ragdolls, the Alien Troop Attack. And it pretty much goes over the creation of agents in connection with Mixamo. And we can see here that it's pretty well done and you definitely should check it out. It's a lot of fun watching this, making your own agents and setting up a little army. So back in Houdini, you can see that I have already here the setup created with the help of the VFX school tutorial. And I'm using Houdini 18.5.5.32. And to pretty much make your scene more attractive and interesting, you can use the Megascans plugin, which is here not showing up in terms of visibility. So for all those who have not seen the previous video about the setup to make your menu visible, you can go here to edit preferences, general user interface, and set this to 1, enter, close it, and restart your Houdini magic. And I'm opening up the scene and you can see how Houdini is building up all the layers I used in the scene. First we have the crowds, the sauerkraut, the krautwurst, kraut sausage, and then we get the first scattering. In the scene we have bones here, stones, which are scattered on the ground. We have this Arnold portal light in the back illuminating the scene. We have some grass, bushes, and some canyons in the back. And let's see if my Megascan is working now after this little tip. No, it's not working. So again, edit, preferences, set 1.5, accept. No, not working. Okay, let's save this and restart Houdini. And back in Houdini again, you can see some patients paid out. We have the Megascan plugin back working. And now let's have a look again at our Alien Attack Trooper Valley. So if your workaround with the size of the user interface from Houdini should not work, you can always do a workaround with the Python script of your Quixel Bridge file, where you can manually adjust the size of this window here by some scripting. How to do this is shown on the YouTube channel in the previous video in the comments. So I think everybody who's still suffering not getting this window here working should look into this little quick tip. Okay, so now I'm opening the Quixel Bridge here. For everybody who does not know what Quixel Bridge is, it's actually a big library about photometric scanned geometry, landscapes, assets, rocks, fruits, nature, plants, surfaces, everything that actually exists in your environment, in your real world, beside the computer world. And I want now this sandstone rock formation here inside my Houdini scene to make the scene more attractive and more happy to the eye of the beholder. And I have some options here. You can see that we can see the texture map here. This is the albedo one, displacement, the normal map, roughness, and so on. And we also can preview this model in a 3D environment, as you can see here. So before you make your choice, you always have a lot of great possibilities to take a look at your asset in this little 3D viewer here. So I decided to take 8K resolution, and you go to this little button here, download, and it's then saved to disk. Takes a while, so let's in the meantime pause the video and come back when everything is settled on the hard drive. So while it's downloading, I like to mention that the Megascan plugin needs to be open, and we are going to use the Arnold render engine, which is in my opinion one of the best available render engines on the market for 3D and CGI creation. We also could use RenderMan or Mantra, but we're going to use Arnold. And we want to use the standard surface. You could also use triplanar, which I will cover in another tutorial. So we're gonna use standard surface. I want to use Megascan scattering because this is the way your scene is filled up with the assets from the library here. When you do import plants, you can add some um, basic motion, so they are pretty much moving in the wind. And I want to convert to the Houdini image format, the rat. So let's see how far we are. And it's done. So what I figured out that the best way to import your assets is to let the Megascan plugin window open. Go to the little blue arrow here, which indicates the export. We here have the 8K resolution, which is also loading in the background. We have a level of detail of 0. 5 is a bit lower than. And we hit here export. You can see that this image is indicating that the file is now exported to Houdini. What you not can see is that the machine now is converting 11 textures, which I pretty much defined in the way I want to download and export, because you can specify the amount of images. You can say which kind of file format you want, JPEG, EXR, or um, images that fit your pipeline. And it's converting now, and I'm going to pause the video again and see what it's making in Houdini then. So once the export is accomplished, it creates a subnetwork for us. To dive into the subnetwork here, hit double click, and you can see that we have asset material, which is the material. We have the asset geometry as a little network, which does nothing more than reading the file, transforming the file, deleting attributes like the FBX export format, assigning a material, and ending that tree with a little null here. And the interesting part is the scatter setup. The scatter setup pretty much is built up of a for loop and copy to points. And we can see that here the source object is picked from the path where the rock is loaded with the level of detail 0 into an attribute wrangle where you can see how the Vex code sets the iteration, the seed, and the points. So the best way to scatter your geometry is to go to the grid here, which pretty much makes your geometry settling into the scene. So at the moment we have a size of 10 by 10. I'm gonna higher this to 100. And you can see how my geometry is now scattered upon this grid here. I set this to 20 by 20. Give it more points and variation, maybe 50 to 50. And you can see how all the block parts are scattered on the ground. We have here the Quixel simple scattering node, which is pretty much nothing else than a scatter node from Houdini with different new additions like density, like p-scale, but we want to focus here on the total count. That is the number, how many versions are scattered onto the grid, on this grid here. And you can see they are now far away in the distance. And I want a global seed of 555. And I want to play with the rotation, which is on the y-axis. If you always ask yourself which axis is important at the moment, look down here into the little gizmo and you see there, okay, y is up above, x is to the right, and z is the depth. So we can here define the offset angle. We can play with the angle spread and also the seed. So I take a seed of 5 and also the p-scale. P-scale is the particle scale because those points scattered on the grid are actually defined by those points here at the beginning. And the p-scale helps us to bring variation to those scattered points and the connected geometry. Gonna save this. And we have a ramp here. And I click point number 1. We have a value of 0. And I hit a value of 2. And you can see how they get larger. You can also play around with the point and drag it. But also can play here with the value. Then we can set p-scale min and p-scale max. We can make it smaller and bigger, and the seed also. And you can play with density affects your p-scale. That means the more dense it is, the more smaller or taller it can become, or the less dense also can affect the particle scale. So for me, I think I want maybe 50 of them in the background. Okay. So maybe something like that. So you can also displace the source and make a attribute from the random point. And that's pretty much for the for loop here. We have here the copy to points. And I now want to go into the setup of the material. So we have here the asset material, the canyon sandstone, and it built up a little shader network for us, which is made of a standard surface from Arnold, which is using the albedo, the specular, the roughness, bump, displacement. We have here glossity and cavity, and we can expand this by hitting those little arrow lines here. And you can see that we have a lot of possibilities there. For us here at the presentation is the normal map. and the displacement map. So let's see how this looks rendered. So to create a rendering, you need in Houdini a ROP, a render operator. You find the ROP in the out of your network view here. I have also already an Arnold ROP in the out, and we have a camera here which I gonna lock with this little lock icon, and I go to the render view, activate the camera, and will now hit render to see what the scene is looking with the imported geometry. You can here at this button make sure it's adjusting the rendering to your changes you do wherever you do changings, like in the shader or in the networks. And you can use this preview button to make some kind of preview before the bucket rendering starts off. And you can see it's pretty much the same size, which is not so interesting. So let's go back to the object level, into the scatter setup, into the simple scattering, and let's see what we can do when we add another point here. You can see that we now can adjust some size, and I add another point, save it because crashing sometimes, add some point here, and I change the interpolation to Catmull and play with the p-scale min and max. So then I want to adjust the rotation. I want to use the second axis for rotation offset. And make sure you use the right axis. Like I said, you see this in the gizmo here. So we have two variations in the y-axis. We also could do some adjustments to the rotation in the z-axis, like so. So let's set this to minus. Okay. Let's adjust the seed and the spread of the angle. So you can see how the assets come together here in the rendering. For the last part of this tutorial, I want to show you how the scene is lighted. I used an Arnold Sky Dome. So Arnold Sky Dome is pretty much visible here. And I used some translate options. You can see what's happening when I rotate it 45 degrees on the x-axis. You can see slightly changes. So you should play around with the values to give different light mood to your scene. And in the light settings, you can see I'm also using a texture, not a simple color, a texture. And the texture is a white cliff H 8K HDR with an intensity of 3. So you see when you higher the intensity, the scene gets more light. And exposure multiplies the intensity by 2 to the power f-stop of your camera. So, and I made some slight changes here to the render setup with the camera anti-aliasing. I made a value of 8, and for the pixel filter I used Cadmium ROM, which is in my opinion one of the sharpest pixel filters available. You may know Cadmium ROM, the creator and founder of Pixar, who got his own pixel filter named after his achievements in computer graphics, especially this little hand animation he did in the end of the 70s. Pretty advanced stuff to that time, so he definitely worth a pixel filter. Okay, now let's see how everything looks when it's visible in the scene. So, and while this heavy scene is rendering, I would like to mention my ArtStation account, which is available on that link here. And ArtStation is one of the best portfolio and showcase pages available, in my opinion, at the moment. So definitely go and check the scene out to get some interesting looks on the work and the creations with different kinds of skill sets. And maybe we can link each other to make sure that we gonna share some ideas and some likes and creations. So as you can see, boys and girls, this is still rendering. We see here some bone element, the grass, the sand ground, some of the soldiers. Please keep in mind that this kind of heavy scenes always take some time to getting rendered depending on your machine. But with the new SpaceX program from Elon Musk, we can easily fly to Alpha Centauri and wait there for rendering. So this will be something very cool in the future when we do galaxy rendering. It will be way faster than sitting here on Earth and waiting for pixel by pixel.